welcome back to my channel, Mental Health with Melissa. If you're new here, I'm Melissa. Please don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button for more content. New videos are out every single Sunday and Wednesday on my channel, and subscribing to my channel really helps me get mental health information out there to our communities of color and tons of free LCSW test prep. I have a new LCSW test prep coming out starting March 31st, and it's called Social Work Study with Melissa, and that's going to be in the description box down below if you want more information. I'm really excited to get that out to you. It's going to come with tons of private videos for those specifically that purchase the program, an outline, and a test prep, actual test prep exam. So definitely check that out when you get the chance. Today, we're going to be talking about mood disorders. What I wanted to work on today, or really focus this particular video around, are the new mood disorders that have been added to the DSM-5, because there are a new group of mood disorders that there is not a lot of information about yet. And so I know that in one of my polls that I put on my channel, mood disorders was like #1, I think, for requested video among all the different types of diagnoses that I listed. I listed eating disorders, anxiety disorders, and mood disorders. And mood disorders was #1. So that's why I wanted to do this video. There's a lot of information on the web already about mood disorders, so I'm going to go briefly over that, and then I'm going to tell you about the new mood disorders that have been added to the DSM-5. So all of this is really accessible through online. So if you would like to read more things about this, then I definitely encourage you to go online or look in the actual DSM-5 to read, because I'm just going to skim over this information. I personally just got this information off the web, and so you can do that too. So since the DSM-4, there has been a shift. So now in our new DSM, mood disorders are separated into 2 groups, which are bipolar and more bipolar related disorders and depressive disorders. So in general, the main types of mood disorders that are really discussed are major depressive disorder, bipolar 1, bipolar 2, cyclothymic, and other. So under major depressive disorder, this is when somebody is really suffering from MDD, is what you may have heard of it referred to, or any sort of clinical depression. So there's extreme hopelessness and sadness, very low mood, feelings of loneliness, isolation, emptiness, and there are other symptoms that really affect sleep and appetite as well. And so you're going to want to look at the specifiers for that in the DSM-5 regarding time frame and other symptoms. So bipolar 1 is really characterized by its mania. So this is kind of what sets bipolar 1 and bipolar 2 apart. So the mania is the manic episodes with very increased energy, and it can result in really painful consequences, as it says here. Whereas bipolar 2, a person must have had at least 1 episode of current or past hypomania, and it's less severe than bipolar 1, and at least 1 episode of current or major depressive sort of history or depression. And so really everything else, the criteria for episodes of mania, hypomania, and major depression are the same. And then cyclothymic disorder is a 2-year history of a lot of episodes that are kind of not as severe as hypomania and not as severe as major depression. So really in between. So again, I wanted to make sure that I could give you a very brief sort of psychoeducational guide, so you could read it while you're listening to me, because again, I really keep in the different learning styles in mind as I do these. If you want more information, let me know in the comments section. Otherwise, all of this information is in the DSM-5 if you have it, or it's really just accessible through online search. So I want to focus on the new mood disorders that have been recently added to the DSM-5. So the three new depressive disorders that have been included in DSM-5 are disruptive mood dysregulation disorder, persistent depressive disorder, and PMDD, premenstrual dysphoric disorder. So the reason why I wanted to focus on these three depressive disorders is because, again, they're new, and actually based on kind of my experience as a clinical therapist that provides therapy and actually diagnoses, I've seen these sorts of symptoms and characteristics pop up in a lot of my client cases. I work with a lot of women, and so I've also noticed PMDD as a very sort of significant new diagnosis that has come to light and has really put a name on the symptoms that a lot of my clients were experiencing for years or sometimes decades. And now there's something that actually they can go to and say, this is what I have, and then actually get the treatment for it. So let's go ahead and start with disruptive mood dysregulation disorder. So the depressive disorder was added, and this is for children up to 18 years. And so this is really important if you're going to be working with children or working with parents, because parents will need to know this about their children. Who exhibit persistent irritability and anger and frequent episodes of extreme temper outbursts without any significant provocation. So without being provoked, basically. So in this, you're going to want to look, again, I strongly encourage you guys to purchase the DSM-5 because that is going to really help you know all of the criteria, timelines, and symptoms for any diagnosis, especially if you plan to be a therapist, because some people may not necessarily get their license to be a therapist. They may get a license because they want to be an administrator for a program, or they want to get a some sort of raise or get a promotion, and those do require you to get your license. So I guess I wouldn't say that it would be as important, but if you are getting your license specifically to be a psychotherapist, then please, please, please invest in the DSM-5. There's even a pocketbook DSM-5, which is more affordable, I believe. So definitely get that. Persistent depressive disorder. So this diagnosis is meant to include both chronic major depressive disorder that has lasted for 2 or more years, and what was previously known as dysthymic disorder or dysthymia, which was a lower grade form of depression. So persistent depressive disorder is not going to have like as severe sorts of symptoms. It's going to be less severe symptoms, and something where the timeline has been, again, 2 or more years. So keep that in mind. It's not the same as major depressive disorder, because MDD has more severe symptoms, and the timeline doesn't have to be 2 years for that. Premenstrual dysphoric disorder, so like I was talking about earlier, or PMDD. So this diagnosis is based on the presence of 1 or more specific symptoms in the week before the onset of menstruation, following by the resolution of these symptoms after onset. So the key here is that this is PMS in severe form. So Pms Pre-Menstrual Syndrome is really the week before the menstruation. And for those of you that don't know what menstruation is, because I never make assumptions anymore that, you know, people know terminology on everything, and this is strictly professional, it's pretty much the bleeding. So when you have your period and you bleed, that's menstruation. That's why with premenstrual cycle, it's called premenstrual cycle, because it's the week leading up to your period. And again, I don't like to make those assumptions because, you know, there's some people that really just are not too knowledgeable about what these terminologies are for whatever reason. It may be cultural aspects where these things are not talked about, or it just may be a lack of knowledge, just simply because, you know, this is still highly stigmatized to talk about a woman going through their period and menstruation. So it's really important to know these things, though, especially if you're going to be in the mental health field. So with the premenstrual dysphoric disorder, the symptoms include like severe mood swings, irritability, anger, depressed mood, hopelessness, anxiety, tension, as well as more of an additional 7 symptoms for a total of at least 5 symptoms. So again, this is going to be in the DSM-5. And, if you work with somebody that is very confused, has like severe depressive or irritability symptoms only for a week out of the year, and is very confused by that because the rest of the month they're fine and their mood is stabilized, it may be important to kind of assess further, because I've noticed that this has happened, especially a lot with specific females in different sorts of populations. So definitely good to look more into. I think that this was a very much needed diagnosis to be placed in this particular kind of realm of mood disorders. And lastly, I want to talk about some symptoms of mood disorders. So these are kind of key things that are going to pop out to you when you're assessing somebody, and you're going to want to assess further if any of these things are coming up for your clients. So they can lead to difficulty in keeping up with daily tasks or functions. Children may have physical symptoms of depression like psychosomatic or physiological symptoms like headaches or stomach aches. Because there are various types of mood disorders, they can have very different effects on quality of life. So here's a list of some of the symptoms. So it can affect, like I mentioned before, appetite, amount of sleep, energy levels, emotions, difficulty concentrating, feelings of irritability, irrational thoughts. And so with mood disorders, as it says here, these symptoms are ongoing and eventually start to affect daily life in a negative way. They're not the sporadic thoughts and feelings that everyone has on occasion. So that's something key to remember. They're not the sporadic thoughts and feelings that everyone has on occasion. Like, these are things that come up quite often for them. And so, again, just something very helpful and important to know. All right, thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions, please leave it in the comments section below. Until next time, managing mental health matters.